When I talk to people who are just getting started with I hear the same complaint over and over again. They tell me the output's inaccurate, the quality is inconsistent, or it's just not good. The AI made something up that was completely false. And every time I listen to those complaints, I hear those people blaming the tool. Not always directly, but the blame comes across in their distrust of AI. But I'm here to tell you, most of the time, you are the reason the output is bad. The quality of your output is directly tied to the quality of your input. So in this video, I want to walk you through changes you can make in your prompting to improve your results. Okay, let's jump in. Welcome to the Arts Workplace. This is a place for arts administrators to find practical knowledge, honest reflection, and real experience inside of the work. I'm Amy, and I created this channel to share what I've learned with the arts and culture community. So here is the real thesis of this whole video. Jump in, jump out. That's an old computing idea that you've probably heard before many times, a saying that's way older than AI, but it applies here more than almost anywhere else. Your AI tool doesn't know you. It doesn't know your organization, your voice, or your actual goal unless you give that to it. So it reflects whatever you hand it. When the output is generic or weird or just wrong, the first place to look isn't the tool. It's what you actually gave it to work with. Now, to be really clear, this isn't a guide to switching your brain off. You still need to do the critical thinking. You still need to check the output. The tool changes how the work gets done, but it doesn't remove your judgment from the process. Here is the first tip I want to share that will actually change your output. You need to set up your workspace before you ask an AI tool to do anything for you. Give the tool some context, your brand, your voice, the actual documents that describe how you or your organization talk and what you're working on. This is generally just a few strong examples of your existing assets. For example, for this channel, when I'm creating content, I have a voice guide built from my real writing and my real speaking, and a brand and content foundation document. I share this every time I create something new. You need to speak to your AI tool like you would speak to a person. Without that context, it's like asking a new hire who's never met you before to write in your exact voice on day one. Of course it comes out generic or not sounding like you. It has nothing to work from. So practically, what does that look like? Well, at the start of a new project, spend the first few minutes just handing over the real materials. Upload the actual document. Paste in your style guide or your brand voice. In other words, give it strong examples of existing assets. And if the tool you're using supports saved custom instructions or a persistent project, features available in both Claude and ChatGPT, then take time to set up your project just once, and then you're not explaining who you are every single conversation. One more thing worth knowing before you start a conversation. AI is most likely to get something wrong exactly where you'd least expect it to. This could happen with anything that has happened recently, anything that's very niche, or details specific to your own organization, because that's information that the model was never trained on. So it has to fill in that gap, and it usually does that inaccurately with the same exact confident tone it uses when it actually does know the answer. So here's a rule you have to follow. Verify even the details that may not feel worth your time. A generic question about something well-known, you can probably trust, but a specific number about your own organization or anything that happened recently, check it every single time. In practice, that just means creating a habit. Any name, date, dollar amount, or stat that it gives you, especially about your own organization, gets a quick check against a real source before it goes anywhere public. It only costs you a minute, but a wrong number in a board presentation is going to cost you a lot more. My next piece of advice is also, in my opinion, the most important advice I'll give today. If you take away anything from this video, take away this. And this honestly requires a bit of a mindset shift. Stop treating AI like it's a vending machine where you put in a coin and expect a perfect product to fall out. Start treating it like a team member who you are actually training. You are the delegator here and the trainer. And like any real team member, AI does better work the more context, direction, and feedback you give it. Nobody hands a new hire or an intern one vague instruction and then gets frustrated when they do the job wrong. Don't do that here either. Speak to the AI like you would speak to a person. Here's what that looks like in practice. Instead of just saying, write a donor letter, you would instead write a more detailed prompt with information like, here's who the donor is, here's what we're actually asking for in the outcome we want, here's the tone I want, and here's an example of a letter that worked really well before. That's the difference between effectively handing off a task versus just making a wish and hoping the AI can read your mind. If you've made it this far and my advice is actually helping you, then subscribe right now. You'll get updates when I release content like this, and it really helps the channel grow. Okay, on to the next one. My next tip. Be very clear about your actual goal and the output you actually want. Not just the topic, the goal. What outcome do you want to see? So what that means is naming the audience, the format, the length, what you're planning to do with it before you even get to the topic itself. Who is reading this? What does it need to look like when it's done? How long should it be? What happens after you have it? All right, so to give you a brief example, let's say I want to draft copy for a sales email. What I would say in my prompt is something like, this email is targeted to first-time ticket buyers with the goal of converting them into a second purchase. It should have a compelling and clear call to action and an incentive offer to make the purchase. The point here is a vague ask gets you a vague generic answer. A specific goal with a specific outcome in mind gets you something you can actually use. Another good practice to build a habit around. Have the AI ask you questions before it starts, instead of just guessing at what you need. And once it gives you something, actually give it feedback instead of just accepting the first draft or giving up on the whole tool. This is really just how you'd work with any real person. It's an iterative process. Nobody gets it perfectly right on the first try, including you. The difference is in whether you treat that first draft as a failure or as the foundational start of a real back and forth brainstorming session. So for anything complex, tell the AI as part of your prompt, ask me any questions you need to clarify before you start. And when a draft comes back and something's not quite right, don't start over. Tell it exactly what's wrong. Examples are, it's too formal, you have a wrong number, you're missing a section. And let it revise the output it gave you. That back and forth is usually faster than an entire rewrite. It picks up on your intent faster than you might think. And if you're doing all of this within a persistent save project, then it is saving all of that context as you go. So even better, next time you do this exercise, it will know exactly what you need. Okay, here's my very last piece of advice today. If you are struggling with the AI, or you're finding the results are just getting stale, or you need an entirely different perspective on the work, what you need to do is give the AI a role or a persona. Tell it who it's supposed to be for this task. Maybe you tell it to be an editor or a marketing manager, an audience member, a skeptical reviewer, whatever actually fits the perspective you need. This is also a fantastic way to proof your work and pressure test your message and thinking. So what does that look like? Earlier, I gave an example of using AI to draft a donor letter. Okay, so now you have your letter, but you're not sure the message and the ask is quite right. So then you give the letter back to the AI and you try a prompt like, you are the prospective donor who will be receiving this letter, and you have never given to this institution before. What would you find appealing or off-putting about the message in this letter? What needs to change in this letter to compel you to donate for the first time? Or you are the chief development officer reviewing this letter for approval. What concerns would you raise after reading it? So the role you give it changes the entire lens it reads your requests through. It gives the tool a frame of reference, and I find it also forces the AI tool to think in a different way, so it will often find its own mistakes by taking on that new role. Without that frame of reference, it's only guessing at what voice or expertise you actually want. Now, to bring this home, let me be very honest. I didn't start out doing any of this. I have made all of the same mistakes you have, probably many times over. But as an earlier adopter of AI, I've had a lot of time to experiment. And more importantly, I took courses on prompting and best practice for AI, so I could learn how to properly use these tools. Once I took the time to learn better practice and understand how these tools actually work, my output got so much better. That's not because the tool got smarter. It's because I took the time to learn and finally gave the tool something real to work with. If this video offered you a new perspective and these tips work for you, please share it with someone who also keeps saying, AI just isn't good enough yet. Let's make sure it reaches the people who need it. So the next time AI gives you a bad answer, before you blame the tool, ask yourself what you actually gave it to work with. Do not forget, junk in, junk out. That's really all there is to it. If you're brand new to the concept of AI, I made a full beginner's walkthrough. You can check it out right here. And if you enjoy this content and want to learn more, take this moment to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one.